As I sit in this fully soundproof studio, it's still really easy for me to remember what it was like to not have a space like this as a young drummer. I was 13 years old the first time the police were called on me for tax fraud and firearms trafficking. No, of course the cops came for the drums, and that was just the first of many times that I would find myself in trouble as a young drummer making too much noise. I've been screamed at by neighbors, officially warned by apartment complexes, kicked out of storage units, and scolded by ex-girlfriends countless times. That's why they're all X's. Now, my life would have been much easier if I had access to products like the ones we're going to talk about today, which are designed to dramatically reduce the volume of any acoustic drum set. Now, first up, we have the Black Holes. These are effectively mesh heads with a really cool rim design on the outside. And then we have the low volume mesh heads, which are a little more like standard drum heads. Now, these products are both made by a company called RTOM, and if that name sounds familiar, it's because they are the same company who makes Moon Gels, so dampening is kind of their thing. Now, if you aren't familiar with either one of these products, let me give you the bird's eye view of what sets them apart from each other, and then we'll talk a little bit more about each one. So the low volume or the LV mesh heads are direct replacements for your drum heads. You take your regular drum heads off and you put these on, and you've got a fully dampened kit for under $100. Now, the Black Holes are also drum heads, but they are intentionally very oversized, and they include their own rims. So the Black Hole heads will fit completely over top of your existing heads and rims, which is a really unique way to approach the idea of muting an acoustic kit. So that's the overview, but there's a lot of details that you'll want to know before taking the dive on either one of these. So let's get a kit set up and we'll dive into it. So I realized when these products arrived that of the 3 acoustic kits that I own, only one of them has a 22-inch bass drum, and that would be Little Miss Roadshow. So that's what we're using. Now yes, this is the cheapest kit that Pearl makes, but when I was in Atlanta last year, Casey Cooper and I shot a pretty long video that outlines how to make a budget drum set sound as good as possible, and this was the exact kit that we used. We've got Evans UV2 heads on the tops, clear G2s on the bottoms, an EMAT on the kick, brand new snare wires, so this kit sounds pretty good for what it is. Before we put any muting on this kit, let's just see how we're sounding in the room without any muting whatsoever. We're recording this entire video through a single Earthworks QTC30 microphone, which is mounted right in front of the kit as a room mic. Now, to get this kit quiet, the first step that I took was replacing the cymbals with Meinl's brand new HCS practice cymbals. We've got 14-inch hats, 16 and 18-inch crashes, and a 20-inch ride cymbal. When it comes to installing the Black Hole heads, it's literally just a matter of snugging them over top of your rim. Nothing comes off of your drum set, these just slip right over top of each drum. It's insanely easy to do, and going from full acoustic to fully muted takes about 60 seconds, if that. Now, before playing, you'll want to tighten the heads. To do this, you just take the head off, flip it over, and there you'll find this tiny little cylinder. Using the small key that's included, you just rotate this in either direction to tighten or loosen the head. Super easy. The bass drum is a little trickier than the snare and toms, at least for setup, but it only takes a few seconds to install once you're all set up. So first, I had to put these foam rings on the outside of the drum head, and then the entire head is undersized, so it slips inside of the bass drum rim instead of wrapping around it like the snare and toms. RTOM also included a special bass drum mount, which gives you a little bit of distance on your pedal if you need it, so you can get everything lined up nicely. And just like that, we are muted. So let's hear what these Black Hole heads sound like with the exact same audio setup. Seriously, the black holes are laughably quiet. I had to gain up that recording just a little bit because I was worried it would be too quiet for you to actually hear. What's most impressive is that you can still hear a good amount of tone coming through the drum because the vibrations are still very much going all the way through the shell. Rebound is decent, but definitely not as taut and springy as an acoustic kit, and I do actually like that the rims are this hardened rubbery plastic because I remember a lot of mutes that I used over the years were totally ineffective at muting the metal rim of the drum itself, so you'd still get these decently loud like click sounds, which you don't want. I'm not sure how the low volume mesh heads are going to compare to these, but I'm guessing they'll have a little bit less drum tone, but possibly better rebound. I'm not sure, that's my guess at least, but let's get the LV mesh heads on the kit and see what they sound like. Now, as you can imagine, one of the annoying things about any drum head replacement is that you have to physically replace your drum heads. Not only is this time consuming, but it's also a commitment because you have to do this all over again if you want your acoustic kit back. Definitely something to keep in mind when you're comparing the LV mesh heads to the black hole system. Now, I will admit that tuning was a little tricky with the mesh heads. This is mostly because you don't get a ton of tone off of the head, and I found myself having to check the physical tension of the head a little more often as opposed to just listening to each lug like I would with normal drum heads. But aside from the slight learning curve with tuning, these heads went on just like any other set of drum heads would. Now that we have the LV mesh heads installed and tuned, let's see how they sound through that same room mic. Alright, so now that we've tried out both the black holes and the low volume mesh heads, what's the verdict? Well, I can tell you right off the bat that I definitely prefer the black holes for 3 reasons. Number 1, I like that these can come off and on your drum set easily, so you aren't committing to a permanent practice setup all the time. You can pop the black holes off of your kit and immediately your kit is just back to normal, so that's really nice. Number 2, the black holes gave me way more tone off of the drums themselves. I could actually hear the sound of my drum shell, which I was not expecting from a product that definitionally is muting your drums. And the third reason that I prefer the black holes is their ease of tuning. Tension is applied equally around the entire head just by adjusting that little cylinder on the bottom side, and that makes the black holes easier to tune than even a normal drum head. But I don't say all of this to knock the low volume mesh heads, because if budget is a priority, the mesh heads are under $100 for the full set, which makes them even cheaper than normal new heads that you might buy to put on your kit. And keep in mind that the black holes are about $300, where the low volume mesh heads are about $100, so the price difference is pretty significant. And of course, they still accomplished the goal, which is muting the heads. And while it was a close call, I would venture to say that the low volume mesh heads were about 5% quieter than the black holes, assuming that you avoided the rims, right? Because your acoustic rims are still accessible, so if you clack your stick into a rim, that's definitely going to be the loudest sound that you could produce off of these muted kits. But overall, 5% quieter on the low volume mesh heads than the black holes themselves. But there is one secret weapon that the black holes have over the low volume mesh heads, and that comes in the form of triggers. These BH or black hole triggers are also made by Artom, and they are exclusively for the black holes. So these open up a huge variety of recording options for anyone who likes to use triggers, and it effectively gives you all the recording capabilities of an E-kit, but now on your muted acoustic kit. So the only thing you need to make this work is a drum module or a brain and some 1/4-inch cables. All right guys, thank you so much for watching, and a huge thank you to Tom for sending me these products. I had a ton of fun unboxing them, putting them on, and just seeing what's on the market now, because again, none of this stuff existed when I was young, and I think these are really cool. They're awesome products. If you guys want to see more gear related videos, check out the playlist down in the description. There's also some individual links to gear masterclasses that are available on OrlandoDrummer.com if you're in the mood for a deep dive on specific pieces of gear. Thanks for watching guys. Adam here, the Orlando Drummer, and I'll catch you in the next one. Later.